start off, Darryl, by giving us your overview of what's happened tonight?
I just thought we got belted, to be honest. The start probably summed it up. I mean, Pitsy, because it's a walking try, isn't it? Pitsy doesn't play the ball properly, and then the set after that are just rollers and scores. I just thought that kind of summed our attitude up. I don't think the week off's done us any good. It potentially does moving forward, but I just don't think we've come out of that well. And Saints have been too good for us all year, if I'm honest. They've beat us 3 times. They've been deserved winners 3 times, and I just don't think we've handled how hard they've come at us. I think probably the toughest team in the comp. Okay, I would argue that, but I think defensively they've been impeccable over the last 5 weeks. They're conceding very little. I thought we had 3 chances in the first half and weren't good enough to take any of them. And then we start the second half in such a poor way. They kick out on the full. We have 3 opportunities. We look like we've just been introduced to each other. Thought it was a clunky, error-ridden, bang average performance is what I would say. So yeah, it's disappointing, I thought, but we just have to move on from it pretty quick. I thought it was disappointing for the fans to see us play like that, because we've been completely different to that most of the year. But like I say, the one thing we are getting is some players back from injury, and the players who've sort of gone out there tonight, there'd be a few boys looking over the shoulder, I would say, and that'll sort of turn into a reality next week when I pick the team, because that's just clearly way off where we want to be.
Mindful of your recent fine, I've got to ask you about Saints' tactics at times tonight, which seem to frustrate the fans, seem to frustrate your players at times. Certainly in the first half, the ruck speed, the lack of any ruck speed that you could generate, the lack of 6 agains. Was it a frustration from the coaching point of view?
I just think, how do we want the game to look? And I know coaches talk about it all the time. I'm not getting another fine, it's expensive, that stuff. But how do we want the game to look? I'd ask all coaches that, if I'm honest. Never mind referees, I think it's a tough job. I just think ask coaches, what do you want the game to look like? I've actually said this in a coaches meeting before, and everybody, it's like a Monty Python sketch. Life of Brian. Everybody wants the ruck to be slowish when you're defending, and quick when you've got the ball, but have a look at the game, you know what I mean? And Saints are a very good team, unbelievable players in there, pedestrian. What do we want the game to look like? That's all I'd say. Nothing about referees, nothing at all. They've got a tough job. And I spoke to Phil Bentham after I'd got my fine. I'd text him and said, I want to help the game to be the best it can be. I think we've got a responsibility as coaches, and I ain't getting any more fines, because I think it's hard enough as it is for referees and the game. We want a beautiful game, don't we? That's what I would say.
Yeah, we do. I agree. George Delaney, some suggestion that yellow might have been a red. What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's talked about negligible force. I mean, that's what they said on Sky. I think that's what the referee said. It's an interesting one. I don't think it makes a difference to the game. I think that's a direct shoulder to the head. So, I don't know, what does that constitute.
Well, Paul Helens was just saying, he admitted that maybe 12 months ago it would have been a red, but maybe we have to accept that dealt with slightly differently these days, maybe? Yeah,
well, I think they are a little bit. But what is the mitigation? If negligible force is the mitigation, it's kind of an awkward one to sort of understand, isn't it? But look, I don't want to see players leaving the field. Saints deserve to win tonight. Absolutely that was pretty obvious to see from everybody. They've belted us tonight. I thought we were poor from pretty much start to finish. I sent a message on at one point saying just go and introduce the boys to each other, because it looks like we just got together and we had a pretty decent week of training, to be honest. But the pressure that Saints put you under is intense, and I just don't think we handled it well at all.
Is it a lesson maybe in composure as well going forward, because you're going to face these sorts of games as well?
We've faced them 3 times now. We haven't got any better, so I don't know how many lessons we need against St Helens. Look, I just think if you look at I think it was Shenny was talking about, if you look at their squad, and they're sort of littered with international players, and absolutely nailed on gritty Super League players, and we're kind of a little bit different to that. And we're growing and developing and learning, and we're going to have some days like this. I think that they're hard to take at times, and the players are really disappointed. But it's kind of a reality as well, that you're going to have some days where you're not quite good enough, or the team on the other side of the field's better than you. And I thought they were just way ahead of us tonight. I just thought they individually and collectively were just on a different level to us tonight. But that doesn't mean to say that in the future, we could easily play Saints in the playoff. They're third, we're sixth. Who knows what's going to happen? And you can't play like that. You just get beat against St Helens, because they, I think they've got a really great intent about them at the moment. That is, as the score lines are showing, they're difficult to break down.
Just on Corey Hall, he hobbled off towards the end. How was he?
Yeah, foot injury. Didn't look great. Not 100% sure. He'll have a scan, and we'll take it from there.
It's probably likely you'll drop out of the top 6 this weekend as Hull play Salford, but there's a long way to go still. How do you read the run-in from here on in? 6 games left?
The best team will get in the top 6. I think Warrington lost tonight, didn't they? I think it's going to be tough for them.
Is it a 2-horse race, you think, between Wakefield and...
Well, it looks like it. It's not impossible for Warrington. Well, there's 6 games left. I think they have to win them all, to be honest, if they're going to get in. I think we just need to look after ourselves and get consistent and do things a fair bit better than we did tonight. We've got Salford next week. We all know how tough life is for them at the moment, which is very difficult to watch, if I'm honest. But we're all just looking after ourselves, and we've got to do that. And I think we've got a good opportunity, but it's not a nailed-on one. We've got to do better than we did tonight to beat most teams, I'd say.
Good luck. Good luck with your back as well.
You probably won't want to talk about it, but bigger picture, do you think Saints are genuine contenders? That was everybody talking about Rails this year.
Yeah, well, they'll get Jack Wellesby back pretty soon, I think, and I think that's going to be for Paul Wellens a conundrum, really, because Saylor's done well at fullback, and Mbai's been pretty good at half. I do. Yeah, I think if you can defend like they do, then you can. Grand finals are notoriously, they can be tight and it can be wet, and if it's wet conditions, they look like one of the best teams at the moment. So there'd be a chance, I would say. They're very difficult to break down, and you put them against anybody in a big game, and they've got the players, as I already mentioned. They've got international players across the team, and that is generally a good sign.
Who do you think you might have to come back next week, and not the week after that?
Us?
Yeah.
I think Kai Rodwell potentially comes back into the equation next week. We've got a fair few players who haven't played. Ollie Russell obviously didn't play. Josh Rourke didn't play tonight. Seth Nicotimo, Cam Scott. I'm going to give those boys a chance to stake for a place in the team, and then. We'll see where we are after next week. I think we've got a long turnaround next week, so need to get that right. Get it, you know, it needs to be balanced how we look at it and make sure that we're not overly harsh. But you know, I mean, clearly it's a fair way off where we want to be tonight.